everyone, today in this video we will learn control statement. Control statement belongs to the computer programming language. Control statement is the main theme of the programming language. If we know the control statement, then we can write the logic of any problem, solutions of any problem. If we don't know the control statement, then we cannot write the solutions of the problem using programming language. That means computer in a computer programming world, control statement play a vital role. It is very crucial to know. The control statement change the flow of executions of the code and also decide which block of code to execute when to execute which block, that determined by the control statement. Control means control, to control something. That means it control the flow of executions, flow of sequence of the executions of the code, and also it decide, control statement decide which statement to execute when according to our requirement. That means control statement is very much crucial things, and it is compulsory to know to learn the programming language. Now, today we'll learn the control statement based on the C programming language. All of the programming language use this control statement. Now, let's learn the control statement. How many types of control statement available in the C programming language? This is the common feature for the all programming language, whether it is in Java, C#, or C++ or C. Control statements are common for all of this programming language, and all of this programming language use this control statement to find out the solutions of the particular problem. Now, let's describe each control statement one by one. The most common control statement is selection, another is looping, and third one is conditional. Now, selection. Let me to write control statement selection. Looping is also called iteration. Third one is condition. Let me to describe each one by one. Each of this one by one. Well, now first of all we'll learn selection. Selections. What does the selection means? Selections means to select something from a number of choice, number of options. There are available a number of options, choice, and we need to pick one. That is the real-time example of selections. For example, there is a 9 ball which are of different color, and if we choose, we have to choose one ball. This is the selection, and we will select which color we need to pick up. This is called the selection. Selection means to select something one from a number of choice. This is the real-time example. And selections in the programming language means we need to write a block of codes, number of block of codes, which is called the program. We need to write a block of codes, number of block of codes, and we need to decide which block to execute when. This facility is provided by selections statement. Selection means to select something. Suppose we have a block of code, B block of code, C block of code, and A, B, C. These are the code. Suppose A, B, C, these are the codes. And when to execute A, in what conditions to select B, and in what conditions to select block of code in C. This is called the selections. Selections comes with the conditions. Selections come with the conditions. condition determine which block of code to execute. That means conditions. For example, there could be a number of conditions. For example, if for example in the programming case, if the mark obtained by a student is greater than 80, then in that case we need to display a block of code that execute that display distinctions. Now, in another case, if the student get the marks greater than 60 and less than 80, at that time we need to execute. We need to select those code which display first divisions. That means selections. We need to select one from particular choice, particular options, given options, and selections come with conditions. Conditions, when the conditions satisfy, then the block of code corresponding to that conditions will be executed and we will get that particular output. That means how many type selections? Let me to describe conditions first before going to the selection subtractions. Conditions. What could be the conditions? Suppose a is a variable. A is greater than 5. A is greater than 5. This could be a conditions. And we'll need to enter a value of a from the keyboard. If we enter value of a greater than 5, then this conditions gives true. Here the conditions in the programming language, conditions that comes with the selections gives only two result, whether it is true or false. Either it is true or false. It have only two output, true or false. That means this is a conditions. This can give only true or false. True can be represented by 1. True can be also represented by 1. False can be also represented by 0. That means this statement can give only 1 or 0. One of two output, 1 or 0, or true or false. We can say 1 is equal to the true, 0 is equal to the false. Now, conditions gives only two value, 0 or 1, and this is one of the example of conditions. Now another conditions is a is less than equal to 5. A is less than equal to 5. These are the conditions. In the conditions we'll compare something. Okay, that gives either true result or false result. Now, the conditions that selections takes could be combinations of the two conditions. For example, a selection take a conditions. Let A is a condition. Suppose A is a condition. A is a condition. Now, A could be something comparison 5 is less than 6. This could be. Now, another A could be also the combinations of the two conditions. For example, or 2 or 3. Suppose A is one variable, B is another variable, then a conditions could be A is greater than 5. This is first case, and B is greater than 5. These are the two conditions, but we can make these two conditions in a single selection statement. We can use these two conditions in a single conditions. For example, if we use two conditions in a single statement, then we need to connect these two statements. That means AND A now, or we can append two conditions using AND operator or operator. 2 ampersand means AND operations. two 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 straight line means this parallel line means or operations. This represent the and operations. This represent the or operations in the computer programming language. Now, what could be its output? Suppose this is x and this statement is y. X, y, x and y. Now, this statement can have two values, either 0 or 1, and this statement again can have two values, 0 or 1. Now, if we treat these conditions as a single one, then this must give the single value, either 0 or 1. Now, how what would be its output? Suppose this statement is false, false and 0, x. Suppose this statement is false also. Suppose this statement is again false and this statement is 1. 1 is true. Suppose this statement is true and this statement is false. Suppose both statements are true. For the two conditions, there could be combinations of 4. There could be 4 combinations. We have already studied, and we have studied the truth table of the AND gate AND operations. We have studied the output of the AND operations. What would be output of AND operations when both input have 0, 0, 0, 0. The output of the AND gate would be 1 only if all of the input have value 1. That means it gives 1, otherwise it gives 0. Now this in these conditions for AND gate. And in that case, let suppose for these conditions, let A is equal to 6, B is equal to 4. Now, for this example, let us see. A is greater than 5, means 6 is greater than 5. This conditions gives true 1. This gives 1. And B is greater than 5, 4 is greater than 5. It is right? No. This condition do not satisfy. That means 0. This gives 0. This gives 1. And we're connecting this output by AND operator. That means when 1 and 0, two input 1 and 0 is given to the AND gate or AND operations, then final output would be 0. In that case, this its output would be 0. Now for this case, for our operations, let's see what would be the output of our operations. The output of the OR operations would be 0 only if all of its input are 0, otherwise it gives 1. That means for the same case, for the second conditions, A is equal to 6, 6 is greater than 5, true, that means it gives 1. And OR operations, and 4 is greater than 5, it is wrong, that means it gives 0. 1 and 0, 1 and or 0, 1 or 0 gives 1. That means we achieve for the same value of A and B, this expression gives result 0. That means this conditions did not satisfied, and for this OR operations, this gives output 1. That means this condition satisfied. Now, and we can make combinations of any conditions, and we treat these combinations as a single conditions to use in the selection operations. That means we can use any number of conditions we can combine using the AND OR operator, and we will apply the AND operator, AND gate or gate operation output. Its output would be as similar to this truth table, and we can combine any number of input. It can have any number of input. This is 2 input, 3 input. We can have 3 input, 4 input, and so on. And its output would be according to the rule of OR gate or operation or not operations. This is the best use of or get nor get. Now selections. Selections takes the conditions. The conditions could be a combination of the conditions, single conditions or the combinations of conditions. A combinations of conditions contain the number of conditions connected by combined by this and an or operator. But as a whole, these are treated as single conditions for the selection operations. Now, that means we have studied selection statement take condition to decide which statement, which block of statement to execute. That means selections if statement. Else if statement. Else statement. And another thing we can also write nested if else if. This is also called the ladder else if statement. Now let me to describe each statement one by one. Now if statement have only one block of code, only one options, only one choice. We need to choose or not to choose. We have to decide we have to take this or not to take this. It's have only one options, whether we have to choose it or not to choose it. If statement, this is called the if statement. If statement do not have multiple choice, it have only one choice, and we have to decide whether we have to choose it or not to choose it. Now this is the if statement. We'll state later after describing this from example. Now second number, else if statement. Before going to else if statement, let's describe else statement. If statement, let's describe else statement. What is the else statement? Else statement come along with the if statement. If it have two choice, it have two choice, A and B. Let's say A and B. If the it use only one conditions. If conditions use have only one choice and have only one conditions, if this conditions is satisfied, then we need to choose those options. Otherwise, we do not have any other options. Whether we have to choose or not to choose. Else statements. Else statement come along with the if statement. This is the extension form of the if statement. Similar to the if statement contain a single block, single conditions or conditions. And else statement means else also comes with if. If contain one conditions, else contain one conditions. There are two conditions. Else two choice. There are two choice. If have one choice, else have one choice. And if only contain the conditions. If that conditions is satisfied, then the block of if statement will be executed. Otherwise, if the conditions of the if do not satisfy, it gives 0, then the block of statement of if is escaped and the block of statement of else will be executed. That means we'll briefly describe later. Let's understand. It have only one choice. Two choice. That means from two choice we need to pick one. If the conditions will be satisfied, then one statement will be executed. If that conditions will not satisfy, then another statement will be executed. And let's go to the else if statement. Else if statements also contain the if statement and else statement. If conditions, else if on the statement, it can have any number of options. It can have 3 options, 4 options. Here options means the block of code. It can have any number of block of code, but execute only one. We have to choose only one block of code. We need to execute only one block of code at a time based on the conditions. And it can have any number of conditions. That means if else if conditions also contain the if condition. First, to write the else if statement, it first contain the if. First of all, we need to write the if statement, and it comes along with the conditions. If that conditions will satisfy, then the block of statement of if will be executed, other are skipped. And if conditions do not satisfy, then the next else if conditions will checked. And if this condition satisfy, this the block of statement of that else if statement will be executed and other skipped, and so on, so that we can write any number of else if statement. And at last, if all the conditions do not satisfy, then the else conditions, the statement of the else will be executed. Then nested else if statement. If else if conditions contain within the another else if or if conditions or else conditions, then it is called the nested. Nested means something inside. This is called the nested else if statement. Let's draw the flowchart and describe each statement one by one. Is if statement. If statement. If conditions, block of statement. 1 2 3. This is the block of statement. This is the simple structure of the if statement. This is also called the syntax of the if statement. And conditions here means a is greater than 5, and we can connect two conditions using the AND operator or not operator. B is less than 4. This type of conditions, this type of case comes here. That means conditions. If always come with the conditions. If the conditions inside this parenthesis will satisfy. In case of if this satisfy, then this block of code following the if conditions will be executed. Run. If this condition satisfy, this statement will run. Otherwise, nothing to run. If this condition satisfy, this statement will be running. Otherwise, there is no options. That means, for example, let a is equal to 5 here in this case, and a is equal to 5, b is equal to 3. A is equal to 5. 5 is greater than 5. This is wrong. 0. And in case of AND operator, we need to understand, in case of AND operator, if we find any input having 0, then its output automatically 0. That means we don't need to check other conditions. We found one input 0, that means its output will be 0. Now, in that case, it gives 0. It gives 0. 0 means this condition did not satisfy, and this statement will not be executed. Now, one case. Another case, let a is equal to 6 and b is equal to 5. A is greater than 6 is greater than 5. That is true. 1. Now, 1 do not decide the output in case of the AND operations. And we need to check b is 5 is less than 4. No, it is wrong. 1 and 0. AND operations give 0. 0 means these conditions do not satisfy. In case of this condition do not satisfy, this statement will not be executed. And let's see another example. Let b equal to 2, a equal to 5, 6 is greater than 5, this gives 1, b is equal to 2, this gives 1, because 2 is less than 4, true, 1, both 1. That means when all the input of the AND gate is 1, then its output will be 1. 1. Now, in case of 1, if conditions gives result 1 or true, then this statement will be executed. This is called a simple if statement, if conditions. Now, what would be the flowchart of this? Condition. Conditions always gives two results, either 1 or 0, or true or false. That means let T denote true, F denote false. If T block of if statement, block of if statement will be executed, and let connected by a connector. And now this is the flowchart of the if statement. That means a program comes from here and conditions. A conditions will be checked. If condition satisfied, that gives true result, or 1, true or 1, and the block of if statement will be executed. There is only one option. If it is true, this statement will be executed. If it is false, this statement will not be executed and nothing to execute for the if conditions only. And conditions gives only two possible value, true or false, 0 or 1 or 0. This is the if conditions. These conditions could be a single conditions, single comparison, or a multiple conditions comparison connected by and or operator. Now, if else. Else if. So let's else conditions. If else, also called, also we can write if else statement, because else only comes with if statement. Else alone is impossible. Else we cannot write else only else. We cannot write only one else. Okay, else always comes after if or else if. Now, else is statement. Else statement. First of all, let's for the same case if these conditions. This is similar to the previous one, and a block of if will be executed. 1, 2, 3. Else 4, 5, 6. 4, 5. Now let's see here. Else always come with if, and if else also we can say if else. It's contain two options whether to execute one block that contain 1, 2, 3, or another block that contain 4, 5. And this statement also have only one conditions to check. Only one conditions means there is a, we can see this have the two conditions, but the final trait of this if statement treat this as a only one conditions. Now conditions comes inside the bracket. If these conditions satisfy, then this block of code will be executed. If these conditions do not satisfy, then the block of code of else statement will be executed. For that case, we can also write block of if statement. Block of if statement. Also we can write 1 2 3 because 1 2 3 there is 1 2 3 true. If this condition is true or gives 1, then block of if statement will be executed and it goes to the end. Otherwise, block of else statement here in case for 5 block of else statement will be executed if these conditions do not satisfy, then the block of else statement will be executed and program goes to the end. Okay, there is a two possibility, either it execute if blocks or it execute else block. That means there is only one conditions for if else also. That means if their condition satisfied, then the block of if statement will be executed and the program go to the terminations without executing this statement. If these conditions give the false result, then it executes the else statement and the program goes to the end without executing this statement. That means if only if conditions have only one choice whether to choose each or not, but else have two choice. If the conditions of the if statement will be true, then the statement of the if block will be executed, otherwise the statement of the else block will be executed. In that case, we have learned if statement and else statement. Now there is another thing, else if statement. Now let me erase it and write again. Else if statement. Else if else if statement can have any number of block, any number of conditions based on our requirement. It can have any number of, if only if conditions have the limitations, because it have only one options to choose and it contain only one conditions, and else conditions also have, if else statement also have limitations because we have a two choice and one conditions, and among from them we need to choose. But there would be also conditions that we need to choose multiple option choice. There could be a multiple options 4 5 6 11 10, and there could be a multiple conditions 5 6 7 and so on. So that at that case, if there is a conditions more than one and if there is a choice more than two, at that case we can apply else if statement. Else if statement also contain the if statement. If conditions, if is compulsory for all of the conditions, if is compulsory for all of the statement. That means if itself contain the if statement, else also need to come with the if statement. Else if again contain the if statement, at least one if statement. Now let me write if condition. If contain, if condition 1, conditions 1, let block A, else if condition 2, block B, else if condition 3, block C, and so on. And then the last else block J. Now the syntax of writing the else statement is there. It contains the block A, block B, block C, and so on, and block Z. And these are the blocks. Now we need to choose only one block at a time based on these conditions. When whether we wrote the number of the block, we need to choose only one block at a time based on these conditions: condition 1, condition 2, condition 3, and so on. This is the syntax. And we have appended number of else if statement between the if and else. If and else statement. If if statement is similar to the previously we have described if else statement, and else statement is if else statement we have similar to the descriptions we have previously made. And what we have appended here, we have just appended the else if number of else if. It could be any number of else if. It could be only one else if, two else if, and the number of else if will contain conditions along with them. Now this is the syntax of writing the else if statements. Now how to choose this block of which, how to determine which block of code will be executed at what conditions. Now first of all, the program check, the compiler check conditions 1. Compiler check if conditions of the if statement, and if these conditions will satisfy. If these conditions gives 1, conditions can have two value 0 and 1. If these conditions have value 1, true conditions, then block of A will be executed and the remaining will be skipped. Remaining statement will be skipped. No executions of the block B, no execution of the block C, and no execution of the block Z, and so on. That means only block A will be chosen to execute. Now, if in case if these conditions give 0, that means block A will not be executed. Block A will not be executed. Now, in that case, if this condition is true, and the compiler check this statement, conditions 2, compiler check condition 2, whether it gives 0 or not. If it gives 1, then the block B will be execute. If conditions 2 gives 1, block B will execute. That means no block A, no block C, no block Z. Now, in case if these conditions also do not satisfy, that means if these conditions also give 0, then the next statement will check the compiler. The compiler will check the next conditions. If these conditions gives value 1, then block C will execute, and the remaining do not execute, and so on. And similarly check all of the conditions. If any sequentially, if any condition seems true, then the block of code corresponding to that code will be to that conditions will be executed, and other don't execute. And if all the conditions do not satisfy, for example, if these conditions do not satisfy and give 0, if these conditions do not satisfy and give 0, if these conditions do not satisfy and give 0, then the at that conditions the block of else statement will be executed regardless of other else conditions. If other conditions do not satisfy, then the else statement will be executed. Now let's draw the flowchart of this condition, this syntax. Let's draw the flowchart of this syntax. Conditions 1, if it gives true, block A, block of if, block A, let's say block A, in our previous example block A will be executed and it gives false. We can draw a line from any corner. If it gives false statement, then conditions of the first else statement, else if statement will be checked. Conditions 2, it gives true, block B, true, false, it checks number of conditions. And at last, let's say condition 3, we can append condition 3, block of conditions, let n, block of condition n will be executed if it gives true and it is false. Suppose we have finished the number of if statement, then the last term is false. Block Z. Block Z means the block of else statement will be executed. Now let's connect it by connector. It comes here. It comes. End. That's right. I have wrote end. End there. I have wrote end after connecting connector. Now this is the conditions of the if conditions. We do not need to write this. Else if and this is the else, because else do not contain the conditions. Now look at here, this is the flow chart of the else if conditions. This is if first condition satisfied, then block A, block of code of the conditions 1 will be executed and it goes to the terminations end. If this condition do not satisfy, false, it check another conditions. If another conditions is true, then block of that conditions will be checked, execute, and it goes to the end. And similarly, check all the conditions. If all of the conditions do not satisfy, then it will go to the block Z. That means the block of condition, block of code of else statement will execute and it goes to the end. In this way, the else if conditions will work. Now, what is the nested else if? Nested else if. What is the nested else if? Let's understand from this figure. If else or else if any block contain the conditions, if conditions, else if conditions, or any conditions, then this is called the nested conditions. For example, if else if this is the condition, if this condition is true, then it will check another conditions. This condition should be here also, and so on. Now, nested conditions. True. Nested conditions. And we can decide true. If true conditions, this code will be executed, and for the false statement, we can also write a code, false code here. In this way, we can append also here. We can also write conditions here. We can there if the else if conditions again contain, or else if conditions again contain the one if conditions or else conditions or else if condition, then it is called the nested. It is nested. It belongs to another else if conditions, and it goes to here. We can append here connector also. Now in this way, if a conditions contain another block conditions, then it is called the nested if else statement. Else if conditions come within the another block of if conditions or else conditions or else if conditions. Then it is called the nested else if conditions. Later, later after completing this theoretical part, we'll go to the practical part and we'll demonstrate how did this work in the real time, and we'll write the program to demonstrate the if condition, else if conditions, two conditions, three conditions, and so on. Thank you for watching the video. We have completed this conditional statement and later we'll study looping or iterations. Don't miss the next class. Thank you everyone. Please don't forget to subscribe the channel. Thank you very much.